As North Carolina continues to try to recover from Hurricane Helene, there are still hundreds of people missing. And there are still hundreds of bodies that have yet to be identified. You have mothers and fathers that lost children, in some cases, multiple kids. You have kids that have lost their mothers and fathers. In fact, I don't believe a lot of the numbers that are rolling in. I don't believe the death toll. I don't believe the number of missing. And the reason why is because we got certain school districts in the area that are reporting that there are over 100 kids unaccounted for. So we got hundreds of kids who aren't showing up to school, whose schools can't get in contact with them. And this is something that we saw during the Maui fires. During the Maui fires, I forgot the exact numbers, so I'm just going to use this as an example. I'll throw out some random numbers as an example. But during the Maui fires, they said, hey, we still have 100 and something people missing. Let's just say we still have 150 people missing. But the local schools in the area were reporting that they had hundreds, in some schools, literally hundreds of students that never returned to school. So the numbers that were the official numbers of missing that were being reported, it just wasn't adding up, because you had hundreds of kids that never came back to school, that never showed up again, and we never even heard anything else about it. And that's kind of what's going on in North Carolina. It doesn't seem to be as bad, at least yet, from what we know of yet. But we got certain school districts that are like, hey, we got 163 kids that are unaccounted for right now. We don't know where they are. Are they missing, or are they amongst the people who perished in the storm? And that's just one district, okay? There's other districts with kids that are still missing as well. It's an extremely sad situation. And I'm just afraid that some of these kids may fall through the seams and be taken advantage of, or something along those lines. You never know. With the amount of devastation that happened from this storm, you never know, because there are entire families that were wiped out. Entire bloodlines were wiped out in this storm. And I'll actually be bringing you all a story about that later on. But for now, we're going to focus on these missing kids, because this is something that we should be questioning. You can't sit here and say, oh, we have this many people missing, but local school districts say they have this many kids missing. So where are these kids? We need official confirmation about what is going on with all of these kids missing from the local schools. Now, obviously, some of them aren't being sent to school because their families just lost everything, and I have no problem with that. But we need to know every single kid needs to be accounted for. We can't let 10, 15, 5, 3, even one kid slip through the seams here. Because during these disasters, I've watched it. It happens. It happens a lot. And what happened in Maui with those fires was really scary, with all of those kids that just disappeared out of nowhere. But I have this clip I want to show you all. It's pretty long, but I think it's important for you all to watch. And they talk about these kids that are missing from the local school district in this clip. And then, of course, after this clip, I'll be right back to discuss a little bit more about this problem.
Landslides took out entire, gatherings of homes. The lady here was actually just telling me that they still have 163 kids in the school system that are unaccounted for. And this area looks like it's really well supported, really well off.
We're here in
They have gasoline, they have the National Guard, but we still have a lot of people missing.
And this is what I'm talking about, the disaster relief. We're sending money to the rich and the powerful and overseas, where is the well put in place plan to deal with disasters? It shouldn't.
I think the delay in federal response created a vacuum that the community just immediately filled with support and supplies everything that people need, even rescue and recovery efforts.
What day did you come out here personally? Like how soon after the storm?
Sunday we were in Asheville.
So Sunday, so 2 days afterward?
Yeah.
Oh wow, wow.
Yeah.
And so what has been the biggest difference that you've seen
Between then and now?
Yeah, between then and now.
Yeah. So just to kind of give you an idea, it's all kind of starting to look like a spider web, right? The farther out, the outer edges of the web are the people we haven't reached yet. Asheville being the hub, it's the biggest city in this region. So that is where the National Guard went first, where FEMA went first. They immediately supplied aid. But unfortunately, that is not where the most residences were destroyed. So while Asheville did receive a huge influx of federal support in the beginning, it wasn't needed as much. So they immediately started reaching out to these other communities and telling them to go to Asheville to get that support. But you can't do that. You would have to walk for days over mountains and ford rivers, and that's just not practical.
Yeah, I think what we were talking about this earlier, and you could discuss this. Discuss with people and tell people how these communities and houses are cut off, and how literally the river is in a new place. So where the road used to run along the river took out the road entirely and is now there where the road was. So it's not just a matter of reestablishing asphalt. It's a matter of having to build a bridge over a new river for miles, if you wanted the road to go back in the same place. The other issue that we're having is the riverbed is now anywhere between 25 and 40 feet deeper than it was. So instead of being like a nice plain farm valley with a creek running through it, it looks like a valley with a huge cavern, 40-foot deep cavern running through it. So where these roads were, there's no more ground underneath that to just lay asphalt on. So in some of these locations that we've been able to get to remotely, like Garin Creek Community Center and the Nisbet Chapel Church down near Bat Cave, we had to go onto private properties. Thankfully, these community members have opened up their properties, opened up their fences, and are supporting people to use their land to get around the river, or where the river is now, not where it used to be, which is very hard to kind of grasp because things don't look the same. It's catastrophic. People are forced with either walking up the side of a mountain and then down and out, and so extremely rigorous. Her and her team is considering in the planning stages of, they're gonna have to start backpacking in, maybe actually trailblazing, and or getting helicopters, dropping in.
Yeah, and to give you guys some idea of the catastrophe, it's very hard to see because as you saw coming in, the difference between Swannanoa, Black Mountain, Old Fort, driving up through Morganton and kind of around that eastern side into Spruce Pine, you didn't see a lot of damage. What you don't see are all the little haulers that got destroyed and all the little communities that got destroyed.
Right along the river.
Right along the river, right along the creeks. Landslides took out entire, gatherings of homes. The lady here was actually just telling me that they still have 163 kids in the school system that are unaccounted for. And this area looks like it's really well supported, really well off.
We're hearing
they have gasoline, they have the National Guard, but we still have a lot of people missing.
And this is what I'm talking about, the disaster relief. We're sending money to the rich and the powerful and overseas where is the well put in place plan to deal with disasters? It shouldn't be on the American people and to come in and hodgepodge and do what we can, because that's not as efficient. Every day that goes by, people suffer, people are dying. Lucky people were saved with helicopters in the few, but as we know, a lot of people fell through the cracks, that maybe possibly could have been saved. And something that we were talking about, I was wondering is what would an appropriate disaster relief? I don't want to hear excuses anymore from people that want to carry water for these politicians. Hurricane Katrina happened 20 years ago. This devastating, flood happened. I mean, hurricanes come inland, flooding happens. I don't want to hear the excuses about this. You know, I saw China build a hospital in 10 days during COVID. I know what the power of people can do. So
what I've been saying is, if we can spend millions of dollars on training a specific small group of people to be able to infiltrate a remote, isolated, highly secured area, very hard to reach in very difficult circumstances.
Helicopters,
well,
ATVs.
But think of this: if the United States government pays to train Navy SEALs to go in to these similar areas, similar situations, similar environments to kill someone, why can't we spend that money to save someone?
That's right. SEAL teams weren't dropping in here.
No.
FEMA's response was inadequate, poorly funded. Thank you, they're here. You know, I think this is maybe a FEMA distribution center, or is this National Guard? This is the National Guard. Thank you, federal government, for doing what you can.
The National Guard has been, how do I put this? I did disaster work for almost 10 years. Typically what we would do is we would stage up outside of an area that we knew would be have catastrophic damage. After the storm would pass, we would immediately go into the area, sometimes before the National Guard, sometimes with the National Guard, supply aid, and then immediately identify large damaged buildings like schools and community centers that we could dry out and restore so that the community could then use them as hubs like this. And so, like I said, we would usually go into the storm with the National Guard. Now, I wasn't in Asheville until Sunday. That's the first time I saw the National Guard was there, but that's the only place I saw them. They weren't even in Swannanoa, Black Mountain, Old Fort. That's the way I came in. I only saw them in Asheville on Sunday. I didn't see them in places like Swannanoa, Black Mountain, and Old Fort until this past Saturday.
Over a week later.
A week later. And I want to tell you this story. I have someone I know in the Green River Cove. It's been completely destroyed and cut off, and they have had friends hike into them. Their house is destroyed. Everybody's house in the entire cove is destroyed. Neighbors are still missing. They've had friends hike supplies into them, hike in with chainsaws, and they're cutting their way out. The National Guard dropped them off fuel for their equipment. They didn't bring them people. They didn't bring them equipment. They didn't come in and say, you're doing such a great job here. Why don't you guys take a break and recover from your disaster and let us do this for you? They gave them some fuel to keep going. It feels like kind of supportive, but it also feels a little bit odd.
We could have used them a lot more. Today here we were dropping off supplies, and it looks like they just cleared out. There's about 50, 60 National Guard guys. A lot of them sitting around just carrying water pallets. Very helpful with that, but we need to jump in out of helicopters. We need specialized, on the ground and stuff like that. Is there anything else you'd like to share, or anything, from your experiences last week and like moving forward, or anything you'd like to share and let people know?
A couple of things, and they might be a little out of order, but first thing I'm thinking of is, I know there's like a reported body count of 200 and something. I don't know where that number's coming from, but like this lady just told me there's still 163 kids unaccounted for just in this school district.
Just in this
I know communities that were wiped off the map. I don't think they're included in those numbers because they keep extending the rescue efforts. They keep extending. It's usually just 48 hours, and then everyone who's missing is determined. But they're just kind of dragging it out. I understand why. And this is another topic I want to address. How many times do we lose cell service here? Right? There's still places that do not have cell service, and people are lucky if they can even charge their phone, right? So the missing aren't reported yet because there's no way for their loved ones to do that.
So did you say there's a drastic undercount, or it's a big drastic undercount?
I think if there ever is a final count, I don't think they'll display it on the news, but I think it's going to be north of 400 at least. At least
1,000 people missing at least, but 160 kids just from this school. We're in Spruce Pine, this school district. So the situation here is heavy. A lot of work still to be done, and thank you, Kira. She's been out here, I think, just about every day.
Almost every day. We've started taking breaks because also say this: of all the disasters we've done, and we have a little bit of a scale of like our worst, right? What was the worst disaster we've seen? Hurricane Michael was the worst hurricane we've seen. The Susquehanna River floods in Pennsylvania was the worst flooding we'd ever seen. This is like a combination of both of those tenfold. Yeah. And it's been really difficult because this is also so close to my home. Our organization takes veterans into these mountains for hikes for mental wellness and well-being. We teach kids about the environment, and now I feel like I have to switch gears and start teaching kids about natural disasters, how to be prepared, how to keep themselves safe, because nobody knew how serious this was going to be. Nobody was really adequately prepared, and I want to make sure that doesn't happen.
Thank you for sharing.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Yeah, everybody from Dayton, Ohio,
Yeah.
Thank you for donating.
What supplies were not, you guys brought down so much stuff. I have personally adopted a little community center called Garin Creek. You can look up the Garin Creek Community Center. I plan to post some pictures on our social media. I have made connections with their council, and I'm taking a huge truckload of supplies to them tomorrow from you all as well, because that is one of the communities that you can only get to by truck or side by side and up and over the mountain.
All right. Yeah. Thank you for sharing, and a very heavy topic. I think it's important, that we share. So thank you very much. We'll get on out of here.
163 students missing from just one school district. And I cannot stress that enough. People need to understand that this is just from one school district. There are other districts affected as well. And right now, this conversation that we're having is about North Carolina. There's still a lot of stuff going on in Tennessee that most people aren't even talking about. And of course, you got destruction in Florida and certain places in Georgia as well. But just one district in North Carolina has 163 students missing. I know there's another district that announced on Friday that they had 4 students that did not make it through the storm, unfortunately. And they have 20 other students that are still missing and unaccounted for. Now, I'm hoping that this is all because of the confusion, because of the storm. Best case scenario, maybe these families lost their home and they lost a lot of things and they're trying to figure things out, and that's why their kids are still unaccounted for. That's the best case scenario. And that's what's really heartbreaking about this situation, is that in many cases, what you would think is the worst case scenario is the best case scenario for these people. If you lost everything that you worked hard for your entire life, but you managed to still have your kids, to still have your loved ones be okay, that's best case scenario right here, folks. So worst case scenario is that a lot of these kids who are unaccounted for are amongst the people who are, the people who are no longer with us, who have yet to be identified. That's worst case scenario right now. Now, I will say that in some cases, I'm sure some of these families, after going through this devastation, maybe they had to pick up and leave, take their kids with them to another state, another city. So there is an explanation for where some of these kids went. And by the time you're watching this video, maybe some of these kids will be found. And that's what we're hoping for. But we can't just sit here and hope for the best. We have to raise awareness about what's going on. Because like I said, even if it's just 1 or 2 or a handful of kids that slipped through the cracks in all of this madness, that's 1, 2, or a few too many. But for now, let me know your thoughts about all of this down in the comments below. While you're down there, hit that thumbs up, hit that subscribe, ring that notification bell, and I'll be talking to you all very soon in the next one.